Hey everybody, it is your favorite comic book artist's favorite comic book artist. That's right, I'm Jax, and I'm here to do kind of a long form inking video, right? This is a page that was shown on social media, so it's okay for me to ink it and not give away like any major spoilers or major scenes or anything like that. I did just realize, and I don't remember when I drew this if I thought about this, but that looks a little weird. But before we get started, this video is brought to you by, where is it? This video is being brought to you by, that's right, nobody is sponsoring your boy. But we still would like you to like and subscribe. So let's go ahead and get to this. Now, because I'm left-handed, like a lot of artists would start on this side and move this way. As much as I'd love to get this out of the way, I'm going to start over here. This is the more fun panel anyways. So I think it will be more interesting to go through. Let me see if I can find my little ruler guy, because I always like to do my lines first. I don't know why. Well, I know why. It's just, it gives me like that parameter of what I'm working on and working with. And I actually got a shipment this week. So I'm not sure when you're seeing this, but I'm filming on June 19th. So happy Juneteenth, otherwise known as Freedom Day here in the United States. There are some people who may not want you to know about that. You know what I'm going to do, though? I'm not going to give you, like, a historical context for Juneteenth. I don't feel like I'm the right person to pass on that information. That's not my history, right? But I will have a link in the description if you'd like to know more about Juneteenth. So please be sure to check that out, because it's such an integral part of American history. And quite honestly, and this is part of, I don't want to say public education, but this is, and I'm sorry if my voice gets louder because my mouth is right next to the phone while I'm doing these lines. This is part of, how they don't want you to have certain facets of history, like Black History Month, was a unit that we studied. But, we studied like all the people that you know about, right? Like George Washington Carver and Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks. And there was probably like a sentence on Malcolm X. There was nothing about the Black Panther Party. There was nothing about, there was definitely nothing about Juneteenth. It was all the good Black history, right? The safe Black history that you can teach about. I had a friend back in high school, and he would wear a shirt that said Juneteenth celebration. Now, this is, what was that? That was over 30 years ago, because this was sophomore year in high school. And I never asked him, what's Juneteenth, But, 30 years have gone by since then. And it wasn't until, I believe, 2020, during the height of the pandemic, some of the country, some of the world was still kind of shut down. it's interesting to hear people talk about the pandemic and talk about like everything being shut down, because nothing was really shut down here in Arizona. I mean, like, we had like the curfew that started at one point, but it wasn't, like, it wasn't significant. Like, it was still like almost business as usual. There was a lot less traffic and stuff, but I can't recall the world really being like shut down. But then again, Arizona is a backwards ass state. Um, anyways, so it wasn't until 2020, interestingly enough, when HBO Max put out a notice that they were spotlighting black centric shows and movies, right? And they were making them available to people who didn't otherwise have the HBO Max streaming service. So they were putting them on like Hulu and Netflix, and it was just like, this is stuff that we would have had on our channel, but or our streaming service, but we want people to see more work created by black people for black people, written, directed, starring by black individuals. So there was also a link that took you to, I forget if it was the History Channel or Discovery Channel or something like that, but it was about Juneteenth. And I'm like reading this at, what was that, 5 years ago? So that I was 42. And I'm reading about the final days of the Civil War, the final days of slavery, when, the Union soldiers broke through to the final, last bastions of antebellum and captured those towns and those territories and emancipated the individuals who were enslaved. Again, it's not my story to tell, but it's just very, very telling for me and for history in America, that this is something that I never knew about, right? Until I'm in my 40s. And it just, to me, it's very, very, I hate to say it makes sense, but it makes sense, right? Of course, you want to keep that information away from people. You don't want people to have access to information, and it's just very fitting in today's world, or I should say in, today's America. And somebody might say, well, like, why are you bringing politics into it? And I'm like, I don't believe humans are politics, right? It's other people who have chosen to make human rights and the right for people to just exist and, make a living for themselves or thrive or create a better life, through immigration, holding jobs, just existing, problematic. And therefore they have made it political because somebody's existence bothers them. So this is just kind of like my, not shout out, but like my recognition of things. And, if those types of topics and things bother you, then, maybe this channel's not for you, and that's fine. I've come to realize, like, I'm not everybody's cup of tea. I've also realized nobody is going to like everything, right? There is no way that there is something out there that absolutely everybody likes. Whether it's because it's legit not for everybody, or whether it's just some people are going to be trolls and they're going to be jerks and they're going to, not want to see something or, cheer for something or whatever. But that also kind of reminds me of something else. I've been watching some Chris Van Vliet videos on YouTube, and he is a pro wrestling fan. I believe he's a journalist. I think he went to school for journalism. If not, whatever. But he's been doing a lot of interviews with like current and former, not just WWE talent, but people who are with AEW, people who are on the independents. I think one of the first of his videos that I saw was the Danhausen video, which I really liked. But the video I was watching this morning is with Cora Jade, who was just recently released after WrestleMania this year from WWE. And some of the stuff she's talking about, I think, is really important with respect to most industries, if not all industries. But for years, I've said that pro wrestling and comics are inextricably linked because of the ways that they work, right? You have the independents, you have some people who are, making a living working the indies, and then you have especially now, you have the big two. You have WWE, you have AEW, and there are some people who are very, fans who are very tribalistic in sense that, they either only watch WWE or they only watch AEW. And there's always something that's an issue with it. And that's kind of like with comics, where some people only read DC, some people only read Marvel. There's the belief structure that, the Marvel movies are better than the DC movies. And, I'm not here to argue for or against anything. Like, with pro wrestling, we have so many options now. Like, the most options we've had in over 20 years, when we had ECW and WCW as well. Because now we have access to things like New Japan, AAA, Ring of Honor, which of course is, owned by AEW. But you have all these streaming services. You have events being put on various streaming services. You have the network, whether or not it works, because sometimes, it's not that great. But it's very much the same with comics. And Cora Jade brought up some interesting points that I wanted to talk about while doing this video. And that is that individuals tend to try to secure their spots, right? And this is very big thing within wrestling. But it's very true within comics as well. Like, Cora was talking about, now that she's out of her WWE contract and she can kind of do whatever she wants, she has started, an OnlyFans, and the video, the interview was recorded on the 10th of June. And she said she started her OnlyFans on the 2nd of June. So it was 8 days. And she's just like, yeah, financially speaking, I'm going to be okay doing this. But she didn't necessarily 100% know what she was doing with it. So she reached out to a former WWE wrestler, previous NXT champion, women's champion, Mandy Rose, who she said was helpful in figuring that out, and that Mandy and her husband both have like really good business sense, and that they shared information with her on like, this is what you do, this is what you don't do, this is how you keep track of these things, so that she could be successful, right? And maybe that doesn't seem like a big deal, but if you're not familiar with like the history of wrestling, like wrestling used to be this very closely guarded thing where you didn't even know how to go about becoming a wrestler, right? Like it was very hard to get in somewhere. Like you had to know somebody. You legit had to work just to be able to start training. Like it was, I don't want to say it was like a brotherhood or whatever, but it was a very closely guarded secret because of, kayfabe and everything. And if you don't know what that is, look it up. But people wouldn't share information with others. They wouldn't mentor them. They wouldn't help them become better at what they were doing. And comics was no fucking different. I remember when I kind of started in comics, and I didn't know shit from shit, right? This was before, not that I'm have a name now, right? But I definitely have more of a presence than I did when I started 19 years ago. But when I started publishing and creating, and I was doing my book Euthanasia, and it had no reach. Like, if I had done a crowdfunding campaign, like nobody would have cared. And I asked somebody for like guidance or advice, somebody who was, higher up in the industry. Maybe not a superstar like Jim Lee or Rob Liefeld or anything like that, but still somebody, who was known, had a credit on the cover of like a Marvel or a DC book or what have you. And that was if you could get in contact with them. Like some of them are just so closely guarded that they, didn't want to talk to you outside of you being a fan or something along those lines. But if you ask them for advice on like, hey, what program do you use? Back then it was Photoshop. There was no, like, people weren't using Clip Studio. Or it was just looked at as being, specifically for manga, because then it was like Manga Studio Max or something like that. So you could ask somebody like, hey, who'd you go through to get that printed? If you're using traditional tools like I am right now, you could be like, what pens do you use? What pencils do you use? What paper do you draw on? What paper do you print on? What level cardstock do you use? Do you get it glossy? And people would not tell you. They would hold on to that shit like it was gold. And it became this like, well, I can't tell you because I need to, keep my industry trade secrets. Like, it's not the formula for Coca-Cola, for crying out loud. Like, somebody is literally just asking you what paper you use or what company you are printing through. And you're not sharing that information because you're so insecure about some little indie person having any sort of a leg up, right? That you're not going to I'm not even saying be a mentor, but like, talk to them like they're a human being and want them to succeed in any way, shape, or form, kind of thing. And that's a big thing in pro wrestling. Not so much anymore, and I don't think it's so much a thing in comics anymore. But now that I have, a little bit of a following, and I have people who will routinely pick up my books or back my projects and stuff like that, or recognize me by name, I'm not going to be like, oh, I need to hold on to the little bit that I have. How does that help me? That doesn't help me, because if you and I both have the exact same tools, right? We're both working with these Pentel brush pens. We're both using, where's my, I've had these for years. If we're both using these specific pencils, if you have this specific eraser, if you're using 300 series Strathmore Bristol, you and I are not going to create the same piece of work, right? If you print your comics through Comic Wellspring, like I did with Welcome to Pleasant Falls Chapter 1, or if you print them through Artist Express, like I did with the one shot, our books are not going to look the same. They're not going to be the same. They're going to be entirely different things because we're different creators, right? So there's no reason for me to hold back that information from you. Use the tools that work for you. And if you have questions, ask. And if somebody withholds information from you or doesn't, tells you kind of like, well, I kind of can't tell you that. That's bullshit. The only reason they wouldn't be able to tell you that is if they were under an NDA. And that's only going to be with like a big company, right? But that's going to be about like project type stuff. That is not going to be, oh, yeah, I can't tell you what tools I use. I don't think DC or Marvel gives a shit what tools you use. I mean, some companies don't even care if you use AI. I care. I will always tell you never use AI. And that brings about another topic, because the topic of AI is something that has been prevalent. I recorded something a while back while I was working on something else that I'm almost positive I never posted, because I don't recall getting any feedback on it. I'm sure I would have. Is, the prevalence of AI in any sort of art. And some people saying that there's certain facets of AI use that aren't bad. Look, here's the thing. You are not an artist if you use AI. Even if you did the majority of the work without using AI, why would you sully your name? Why would you sully what you've done by using a tool that is specifically meant to find other styles and steal them, and then create inferior artwork that doesn't stand up? The other issue with it, if you don't have an issue with the fact that AI scrapes from other artists, I don't think AI has been trained on me, but I still wouldn't be like, oh, go ahead and use it because it's not screwing me over. No, don't use AI. If you come to me and you say, hey, I did this and I did it with AI, I'm just going to be like, do it again, do it without using AI. Be an actual artist. Other arguments against using AI are the impact that it has on the environment because of the amount of power it is required to generate to do these types of things. It's just the same thing with like crypto and blockchain and all this other crap that it just has computers running day and night. It creates all this like CO2, and they're on these like cargo ships and stuff like that. It's horrific for the environment. So if you're not going to choose to not do it because it's stealing from artists and it's stealing from creators, and it's not just hurting creators, but it's hurting their souls at the same time. Like, dude, if you respect artists, like, stop it. Just stop it. I had a friend who posted something and he's like, yeah, I couldn't think of a good reason to use AI except for this. And he's an artist. He has been doing comics for as long as I have, if not longer. And he posted like I don't know if he's the one who went in and, typed in the prompts or whatever, but it was President Trump sitting at his birthday day parade and like looking all sad, and there was rain falling and stuff like that. And he was just like, I finally found a good use for it. And I commented, I was just like, there's never a good use for AI. Never. Not when you're doing art. I'm like, and I felt like kind of ripping him a new one, because I'm like, dude, you're a friggin' artist and you're doing this. It's stealing, even if you didn't type in like so-and-so's art style. It's prompting on things, right? So it's taking information and it's just using it. So there's nothing good to be used from that. And it hurts my soul when I see people who are artists posting bullshit like that. And that pisses me off more than like even people who know me and know other artists, because believe me, if you exist in this world, you know somebody who's an artist, who's a creator. And they're posting like AI bullshit, So if you're not going to do it because it's stealing from people, and you're not going to not do it because it's horrific for the environment, there are other arguments that people have for using AI. They've said that people are being gatekeepers and being classist and ableist with art. And here are my wake-up calls to those individuals. Kitsune Windsor was a comic book writer, a manga writer. And she wrote, I don't know how many books she wrote, but she did a large-scale graphic novel called, actually, let me make sure I get the name of it right. It's right here. It's called Foxy and Wolfie. FW Chaos. This is volume 1. Look at how big this is, right? Kitsune Windsor had a substantial disability. They were completely immobile, could not use their hands, wrote that entire book, wrote this entire manga with a tool that they looked at the letters on a keyboard to type, and the keyboard sensed where they were looking and typed it out. Couldn't type it out, couldn't do voice to text, typed it out one single letter at a time, looking at a freaking keyboard. You tell me that art is ableist. I'm going to let you in on a little secret that's not a secret, because I've talked about it a number of times. I have bipolar 2 disorder. That's considered a disability, right? I also wear glasses. That may not be classified as a disability, but I've also have a history of cancer, which is classified as a disability. These are all three things that could hinder me, right? Could. Not saying they do. I don't allow them to. Not when it comes to creating art. In fact, being bipolar probably precipitates my ability to create. Or maybe not my ability, but my desire. You don't need to be fully able-bodied. You don't need your mind to not have any limitations on it, like autism, bipolar, cognitive disabilities, even dementia. You don't need to be free and clear from those things in order to create. Even if your hands don't work, I've seen people put paintbrushes in their mouths and paint. I've seen fucking dogs paint. Put a paintbrush in the dog's mouth, you hold out the little tray, dog paints, you know? So don't give me this, it's ableist. Then there comes the argument that it's classist. Yes, I paid a decent amount of money for this Pentel brush pen, right? I think in total with the brush pen, and then a refill, I think it was like $13 for all of it together. Now that doesn't seem like much, but for somebody who is struggling to feed themselves, $13 can be the difference between survival and starving, right? However, a piece of printer paper or lined notebook paper is relatively cheap. You can get a number 2 pencil pretty much anywhere. You can get a ballpoint pen pretty much anywhere. I'm not advocating stealing, but you could literally steal a number 2 pencil, ballpoint pen, a notebook of paper, and just draw or write. There's no gatekeeping with art. There is not. You don't have to be, quote, good at art. You don't have to be, quote, successful in terms of selling a lot of artwork or making a ton of money on it or being in a gallery. Nobody is telling you that you have to meet these requirements to be an artist, right? So if you are making excuses for using AI because you don't want to take the time, this is 40 plus years worth of work. And somebody might say, well, it sucks. Fine. I'm not here for you anyways. This is 40 plus years of me honing my skills to be able to ink this in 30 minutes, right? We're at the 33-minute mark, and I've been talking the entire time. So inking for like 30 minutes. You're telling me that you are okay with taking those shortcuts. Take shortcuts with things that you can and should take shortcuts with, But if you're going to tell me that I'm gatekeeping because I told you that you're a poser for using AI to create something because you don't have the guts to do it yourself, that's on you, man. I'm not gatekeeping you for shit. Other artists aren't gatekeeping you for shit. I will straight up tell you, this is 300 series Strathmore. Or is it Canson? No, it's 300 series Bristol Strathmore. You can buy this at Michael's, right? Now, this isn't even 300 series. Yeah, it is 300 series. This is a Micron pen. This is a Pentel brush pen. These are Staedtlers. That's what I use. I'm not gatekeeping anything. They can be expensive at times. Look for sales. But don't tell me I'm gatekeeping. I printed my current chapter 1 of Welcome to Pleasant Falls through Comics Wellspring. They were super helpful in terms of some of the things that I was doing, because this is the first time I'm working traditional in years of getting the placement and the word balloons right. And I got it fixed. And I got it to me in time for Phoenix Fan Fusion. Nobody is gatekeeping anything from you. If you want to believe that, you're setting yourself up for failure, right? Do you know how many crowdfunding campaigns I've had that didn't make enough money for me to print my books? A couple. I mean, the Bubba Patrol ones were pretty much successful. The second Bubba Patrol for issue 2 was not successful at all. The Bubba Files campaign was terrible, but that was all a learning experience that I figured out because I didn't promote it, because I chose not to put the time in for those things, and it showed. But you know what? I've learned from it. I've also changed what my printing strategies are. Other people look to make, 10, 15, 20,000 or more on campaigns, and that's great. That's fine. A lot of those individuals have other artists that they're paying for things. And while issues 3, 4, and 5 did have an additional artist working on them, or artists working on covers for me, it's also not something that I put into the crowdfunding campaign, because I paid them before we went to campaign, right? Because those people deserve to be paid, not based on potential speculation of what the campaign might raise. With this book, I'm doing all of this on my own. Welcome to Pleasant Falls, that one shot, was the first time since issue 2 of the Bubba Patrol that I did everything by myself. Welcome to Pleasant Falls Chapter 1, which was the first part of this graphic novel that I'm completing, was the first time I did something start to finish traditionally, except for the lettering. So, and I'm doing it all myself as well. I might want some variant artists for the graphic novel, or people to help with the one-shot anthology, horror anthology that I want to do. I might have some people help with the prequel as well, but those are down the road. I'm doing this all on my own, and I'm not paying myself for this. And some people may say, well, you're an idiot for not paying yourself, and that's fine. Other people will say things like, you should be doing it for the love. Well, I really hate that saying, because here's the thing. I wouldn't still be here if I didn't love this, right? So if somebody is trying to devalue your artwork and tell you that you should be just doing this for the love, what they're trying to do is they want something for nothing, and they're upset that they can't do what you do. Just remember that. I had not an encounter. It actually wasn't an encounter, but it was a lesson that I instilled in somebody this past month. They wanted to get a piece of artwork from another artist, and it was a pre-done piece, and they knew how much it was, and they were like, well, what if I offer them this? And I was just like, no. If you tell that person you're interested in that piece of art, and they decide to give you some sort of a discount, or they're like, yeah, I can do that, this for this, which I sometimes do with my pre-drawn stuff, then that's one thing. Do not ask an artist to discount their art. Do not ask them to discount a commission. Do not ask them to discount a pre-done piece. That's some bullshit, right? When a plumber comes into your house and does the work, right? And they've unclogged your drain or replumbed your house or, whatever, do you ask them, they're like, oh, this is, $10,000. Did you say, well, how about 5? No. And a lot of people might say, well, that's the American way, is bartering. Well, it's the American way when it's something along the lines of something that you didn't work on, right? So if I'm selling comic books, not my comic books, but, Marvel, DC, Image, and I'm doing that, and you have a stack of books, and they're $100 in value, and you're like, how about 75? That's different because I didn't create those, and I have the ability to make prices based on what I paid for those books. Now, if you're trying to tell me that you don't value my work to the point where you're like, oh, this brand new book that you just put months of work into, can I have it for less than you're selling it for? Don't ever do that. That's insulting. That's disrespectful. And I won't stand for it. At best, you're going to be told no. At worst, you're going to be yelled at. Because you wouldn't walk up to Jim Lee, you wouldn't walk up to Rob Liefeld. And again, I'm neither of these guys. Somebody's going to be like, you're nobody cares about you, nobody knows your name. And again, that's fine. But you wouldn't walk up to those guys and say, hey, can I have this for way less because I just don't feel like paying that? Some people are really hurt about not being able to afford an original by Jim Lee, Rob Liefeld, not being able to afford to go to a Taylor Swift concert or, what have you. And they think that those people owe them because they're fans or just because they want it. The truth in the matter of the world is nobody owes you anything. They owe you to treat you with respect because you're a human being, but that's about it. I don't owe you my time or my services, and I don't owe you to be disrespected and treated poorly just because you don't feel like paying what I've valued myself at. Now, if I have a piece of artwork that I have marked at $100 and I choose to sell it for $75 and I announce that, that's my decision. You don't then get to say, well, can I have it for less than that? No, that's not how this works. It's like the WWE. I'm not sure about AEW tickets. Some of the AEW tickets are fairly affordable, but WWE tickets right now, even for like Raw and SmackDown, are pretty expensive, right? And Raw and SmackDown are really just being used to build towards pay-per-views. They're not even having like decent matches on a lot of those shows, or they're only having like a handful of matches. And maybe one of them is decent. They're like house show matches now, right? But you don't write Triple H on Twitter or, Instagram and say, hey man, you need to like lower your ticket prices. No, you just don't go. And maybe you kind of bitch about it on social media. And if enough people eventually don't go, then that's the general consensus, and maybe they have to rethink things. But you've got to remember, if if enough people are paying, it's going to stay that way, whether you like it or not. So we are sitting at 45 minutes, and I've got these 2 panels inked. This is one of my favorite panels in this series right here, just because, like, I was hoping that, you know, this would help with, you know, you really getting an idea of who Perry is as a character. And people picked up on it really, really well, which makes me extremely happy to know that people saw it, you know. Kind of the nice thing about doing comics is you can kind of get away with doing things that you would have loved to have done in real life, but either were afraid to get away with, or you know, never had that opportunity, kind of thing. So anyways, that's going to do it for this video. Yeah, check out the link below for information on Juneteenth. Super duper important piece of American history and world history as well. Like and subscribe on the video. Please leave comments too, because interaction helps build, and trying to get up past that 200 subscriber mark, which would be awesome. And until next time, guys, take care of yourselves, take care of each other. And yeah, I will also post a link to chapter 1 of Welcome to Pleasant Falls on my Etsy, so you can pick that up. If you've stayed this far into the video, thank you so much. I'll see you next time.